think
Bukele.
so.
Bukele.
You're going Bukele. Okay.
Do you think he can pronounce Odell properly?
Probably.
I'm going to go with a yes.
Odell was trending today. Trending topic on Twitter.
Yeah, I finally bought my first Bitcoin.
So how you guys doing? How you feeling today?
Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
We can't hear you.
Outstanding.
Feeling good.
I'm doing good, man. Super excited. What about you, Matt? How does it feel to have purchased your first and only Bitcoin?
Pretty excited about it, to be honest. It's a brave new world out here. So,
Yeah, man.
what's going to be our format for this conversation? We just announced President Bukele will be speaking at Bitcoin 2022. He'll be a keynote. He announced on, I guess, was it Saturday he announced Bitcoin City?
I think it was just last night. I think it
Or
was
was
Sunday
it?
night.
Wow, time flies.
Seriously?
Yeah, last night he announced Bitcoin City. Obviously, that'll be a topic of conversation both here and at the conference, I imagine.
For sure. Yeah, it seems like there's debate about it.
So George and I are both Egyptians, and we've seen obviously a lot of revolution in the last few years, and part of the military kind of taking over was announcing New Cairo and building a new capital. So I feel like it's a move. It's building a new city, and it just is made so much more interesting by the fact that it's kind of Bitcoin funded and is like centered around where they can mine sustainably or cost efficiently.
Interesting.
How's New Cairo going?
Slow, from what I hear, but it's coming along. I mean, these things take time. But I mean, that's definitely a good example of promises being made and how far will it go? But having it be founded in Bitcoin is a completely different conversation. So I think that's obviously the exciting part. That's what's getting all the attention and the news. There's some people that seemed a little, I don't know, upset or felt like it was like not up to their expectations. I wasn't really tracking too much. I watched some of the videos, the announcement, hell of fireworks at the beginning, surprising amount of fireworks. But overall, I felt like it was pretty bullish.
Yeah, they had fireworks and then they had like complete PowerPoint failure with the slides. I mean, the history of, I mean, not to start on like a downer note, but I mean, the history of like these top-down planned cities is pretty bleak. I mean, you thought of New Cairo first, CK. I mean, my first thought was Brasilia, which was supposed to be like this massive, awesome city in Brazil. That like it has like 5 million people living there, but it was like basically a complete flop. I would echo a little bit of what George was saying. I mean, I'm kind of in the cautiously optimistic camp myself. I mean, I think we should be critical and we shouldn't just take everything at face value. I mean, it's easy to say everything Bitcoiners want to hear rather than actually executing on it. But this is, I think, the first like planned city, at least in like modern history that I know of, where the target market for it isn't really the people living there. Usually, like when when a government announces a planned city like this, it's we're gonna increase, your quality of life for actual citizens. While this seems more focused on like the international clientele, specifically like the Bitcoin rich.
That is an interesting dynamic. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right.
I mean, I for one am very excited, just because like this is the sovereign individual thesis playing out. So
I know.
I'm very interested in seeing more of this, and obviously it's exciting to see El Salvador really progressing a lot of the Bitcoin game theoretical aspects.
Yeah, it's
very quickly. It hasn't been that long since Bitcoin 21, which is when this was initially announced. since then it's become a law, and now Bitcoin City, which is pretty much catering to Bitcoiners, has been announced.
Yeah, it is extremely exciting to me. One of the goals with the conference is and my personal goal is to bring Bitcoin to as many people as possible, as rapidly as possible. And I love the idea of other countries, other heads of state being like, oh, fuck, we have to get in on this because otherwise we're going to be left in the dust. And I think as El Salvador experiences a meteoric rise on the world stage, it's only a matter of time. I think we all think that this is only the first of many eventual countries. And then, of course, all of them who will be adopting Bitcoin.
One cool aspect of the proposed plan that immediately stood out to me is obviously everyone's sharing the graphic that says like 0%, like all the different taxes, like capital gains tax, income tax, property tax, payroll tax. But what's not in the graphic is a 10% value added tax, which is a sales tax. And for like a long time, I've theorized, when people say, what does, a tax, like an ethical tax system look like in a post Bitcoin world? Sales tax is one of the few that you can relatively easily enforce and collect without like broad reaching surveillance and burdensome regulation on your constituents. So it was really interesting to me that they chose to basically go that route for funding, basically purely a VAT sales tax coupled with that bond.
Hey, real quick, before I think that this is a really fascinating conversation, and we also want to get some people up and, tell you guys about Bitcoin 2022 and what else is happening there. But a little bit of housekeeping first. After this conversation, we are going to be having the folks from the Austin scene, the Bitcoiners out there in Austin, Texas, kind of like the capital of Bitcoin in America right now. So this conversation is just going to transition directly into that. So stick around for that. We got Kyle Murphy, who's going to be co-hosting it, listening in the audience. But if you haven't purchased your Bitcoin conference ticket, really highly recommend that you do so. It's going to be a 4-day event, 3 days of conference, 1 day of festival. Obviously, Nayib Bukele, who is the president, CEO of El Salvador and Bitcoin pioneer, will be there. But so many incredible we have some experts here to talk about the conference, to talk about Bitcoin in general. And I highly recommend, again, go check out the tickets. Go buy your ticket with Bitcoin, buy it with Strike. Use promo code, was it Have Fun Staying Poor,
HFSP. Have fun
HFSP.
staying poor.
Yes, use that code so that way you can save your sats and maybe you don't have to be so poor. But yeah, that's the housekeeping. I'll pass it back to P.
If you can't spell have fun staying poor, you're going to have fun staying poor.
Exactly.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't add anything to that. You nailed it, CK.
Is Austin the Bitcoin city still, or has that been usurped now?
I'm so glad you asked, Matt. It has 100% been usurped by Nashville, which is where I'm in the process of moving, as you know. I'm currently, I should actually change, I should tweet this out. I have a desk that is my laptop, a microphone, and then 4 cardboard boxes that are propping up a broken piece of plywood. So I have literally sold or gotten rid of every single thing in my apartment except for this chair, which I will be selling just before I leave, and my computer.
Get your hands full.
And I'm moving to Nashville.
Congrats, man.
That's so exciting. As a future Nashville resident, I think right now 100% Austin is the king. But
how dare you?
But obviously, we're gonna come out the king, and we ain't gonna miss. That's for sure. But we got to court the Austonians on the Bitcoin Magazine feed, and ultimately, it's great to have a abundance of Bitcoin friendly, Bitcoin forward cities for Bitcoiners to live in.
Agreed. All joking aside, Austin's amazing. Nashville's amazing. Let's make more cities amazing. Bring Bitcoin to them.
Less SFs, man. P and I are
Yes.
both leaving SF, and let's just agree that that's not the way.
I just walked by a newspaper stand that was like, mass lootings are a thing now. It's fucking crazy. But yeah, I mean, let's shift back to the conference and the Bukele news. I was in a space last night, and people were asking about some of the other speakers, right? And I was speaking to, and I think it's an important conversation, the ethos and the approach that I'm using as I am, scheduling and building out the content and the programming for the conference. And, as I said earlier, the goal, the mission of the conference is to expose as many people to Bitcoin as rapidly as possible, because it is literally this lifeboat, and we are, or many of us are trapped on this sinking ship. It's like we're on the Titanic, and there are lifeboats, and there are enough of them for everybody. But if you grab one now, you're going to be a lot more successful. And not only that, but I think that a lot of people focus on the price appreciation aspect, but what most of us are really excited about is the freedom from financial or central bank controlled financial slavery that is being propagated around us right now. And I think that's so important. And the only way to do that is by, in my mind, or one of the most effective ways, is by creating these dialogues between people who are all in support of Bitcoin, but come from very different perspectives. Because if you just have a bunch of people who are, high-fiving each other and slapping each other on the back, that can be really fun, but you don't actually get exposed to the nuance of a lot of these issues. And that's what's so important, especially for people that are sort of Bitcoin curious, right? If they show up and all they hear is one side of an argument, the second they leave and they say whatever it is that that orange pilled them, then they won't have effective responses to some of the other things that are going to come up. And so I'm really focusing on that as we build out the speakers. And I talked a lot about mining and how that, the panels that I'm building out for, there are certain miners who are, I would say they're pro kind of, carbon credit strategies, which I disagree with. And then there are many other ones that sort of like wildcat miners who are vehemently against it. And I think it's so important to foster those kinds of conversations, because as I said, that's the only way that we move forward. And they're super exciting, and they're fun to watch, which is just as important in my mind. That was an
Cheers
appropriate
to that.
response.
Cheers
Yes,
to
sir.
that. So
I don't know. I mean, what do y'all think? Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I mean, I think based on past experience, I'm not surprised that some people have a immediate negative response to some of the speakers being announced. But I would just ask for people to reserve their judgment until they see the kind of conversations and panels that P is actively working on, because I think many people are going to be surprised to the upside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, I think just kind of even going back to Bitcoin City and what Matt was talking about, the 10%, that tax, and like how this is all an experiment, and we don't know if it's going to work for sure. But and it's still early. Like Bitcoin City specifically, it's still super early. Reserve judgment, but it's okay to also be optimistic, and like we want to encourage this type of behavior in the world. This is what we want to see replicated. We want to see many experiments. And so execution wise, there's no guarantees that it's going to be perfect, or that you're going to agree with every aspect of it, but the experiment is worth it. We got to build the citadels. This is V1 in some respects.
Yellow, I invited you up. You messaged me on the side and said that you had something important to say.
Oh, no, I didn't.
I don't know why you'd say that. You said that you were not going to make a
First
joke,
of
and
all,
that you.
first of all, is this recorded?
Yes.
Does that rec thing up there means that this space is recorded?
It does mean that the space is recorded. That is correct, Yellow.
Is this live?
It is also live. Thanks for asking. This is a recorded space that is also live, as you've experienced in the past. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Imagine my setup. Visualize my setup. In one tablet, I have this space going on, and I listen to you guys.
Okay, I can see it. I can see it. Sorry, wait. Let me just stop you right there. What type of device?
The other tablet is playing Sopranos season 4. What do you want from me?
That sounds like a baller setup. Those are all the questions I have for you. Walton.
I give and I give and I give. What do you want?
No, you're an incredibly generous lover. Walton, you were there last night. We were chatting about it afterwards. I'm curious what your thoughts were based on the conversation we were having around the various speakers and the stuff that I said. I'm curious if you have any additional thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. Essentially, as Bitcoin is, we have the right argument. We have a lot of conviction in our argument, and we should be able to put that argument to an audience that's composed of people who maybe already follow people they shouldn't, and are following opinions that perhaps they shouldn't. And unless our opinions and the facts are presented that are in the middle.
Also, I have to notice, in a serious note now, that the major news isn't the city, guys. It's the bonds. That's the news. That's the groundbreaking aspect of yesterday. At
wait, the bot?
The bonds.
Oh, interesting.
That, and they like, oh, look at this. We're going to also build the city here. Wow, right? Like, look at this shiny thing here. Don't pay attention to this important thing. Like, maybe they did it on purpose. I don't know. But for me, I don't know. It seems very bullish, the bond thing. Anyway,
I think it's bullish for both. I think the world's obviously trending towards an authoritarian place, and I think the only thing that really breaks that trend is having competition. And so when nation states are forced to compete for people, right, the sovereign individual thesis, when they're forced to compete for people, they're going to be forced to provide valuable goods and services in exchange for tax revenue. And, with El Salvador dropping all restrictions off of COVID and vaccines and all that, opening it up, with the tax situation, welcoming all the investment. I mean, we don't know how it's going to turn out, obviously, but it's already attracting a ton of investment capital. It's attracting a ton of builders, business people. And I think, and then you add the bond on top of it, game theory kicks in, and other nations are going to try to keep up. And I think then
I'm hearing you, Mark, but like my perspective is like especially see the Bitcoin magazine, how it's run, like people all over the world. The geography doesn't matter anymore. Like in this world, like you can be for an American like company. You can get paid in like seconds with Bitcoin, with Lightning. Like doesn't matter. Like
it does matter, because today Austria and Germany announced that you're either going to get jabbed or you're going to die. So it does matter for some people. They do want to move to other parts of the world. I think it's pretty important.
That's exactly my point. You can move wherever you want, like a centralized place in the world that we can like play defense with walls around. Like I don't know.
No, but we need countries that will open up their arms and accept people in, drop restrictions, make it friendly for people to come and work. And I think then more people will go, which will then increase that competition. So to your point, you're absolutely right. We're not trees. We can go anywhere we want, but we need some places in the world that want to start that competition loop. And then once that gets going, it's really going to accelerate, in my opinion.
Walton, jump in here. You're raising your hand.
No.
Yeah, I've been talking with Magoo, who many of you know, the last couple days talking about these bonds, and he's raised some issues with them that he believes, may mean that one, they're not successful, and two, it will prompt some action from the United States. With El Salvador producing Bitcoin-backed bonds that are the US dollar denominated, taking in US dollars and USDT, essentially they're printing dollars. And you've got an organization, Bitfinex, as the broker for bonds. Now, Bitfinex is the same company as Tether. To me, that's the significant conflict of interest as well. I think this is, as usual with Bitcoin, this is, I think, a plan with lots of good intentions, but I'm not sure how successful this is going to be because of the regulatory challenges.
Again, I DM you, dude. Like, it's amazing. It's nearly 2022, and we're still talking about Tether. Still,
I don't think it is Tether FUD.
Come on, man.
Bitfinex being the broker of a bond that you can buy using Tether.
Well, I mean, this is a very, I think that's a very good point, Walton. I mean, because like, to me, part of when I saw this bond announcement, like, part of what I felt about it, my initial gut reaction to it was like, throughout the history of Ethereum, we've seen them do like all these different attempts to basically, so maybe I'm coming at it from a slightly different perspective, but we've seen all these different attempts to basically create illiquidity in the market to pump the price of Ethereum. First they had the DAO, then they had ICOs, and like this whole idea of, and then recently they're doing this thing where like they burn fees when they're mining, and it's like all these different techniques to try and decrease the supply, the liquid supply of Ethereum to pump the price. And this bond, in a lot of ways kind of feels like that. Like you do this bond, you automatically buy $500 million worth of Bitcoin. And then the goal is, I guess, to have more bonds like this, like a bunch of different bonds like this, and kind of like scare the market into thinking there's going to be all this illiquidity there.
Yeah, and not only that, it's Tether, and Tether isn't, USDC. And so the US can't stamp this out. There was an article that I just saw that came out today that the US, or I think just like all international governments, are, quote, taking a pause with El Salvador for just lack of agreements or whatever the hell it might have been. But this is a direct threat and competition with the US banking cartel and every other central bank, which is great because that's kind of like what we as Bitcoiners love.
What is actually going on here, and it's kind of difficult to really tell beyond the facts, which is that there's going to be I'm excited to see what this leads to. I'm curious if anyone is on stage, what kind of conversations would you want to hear from Naib and maybe other members and heads of states?
Can I say something because I have to go?
Hurry, Yellow.
If you don't like Tether, if you like Tether, I'm gonna offer you like the Greek perspective. I would dream that 10 years ago, we as a country to do what El Salvador did, like with a private company to get some funding and not bow down to the fucking IMF. I think that's positive, and I'm gonna stick with that. I think it's very bullish also for Bitcoin, and I think more countries are gonna follow, and I don't know, it's a good thing. I'm still skeptical about, I don't care really about the politics of El Salvador. At the end, I care about what it's built and what's a new kind of like thing is happening with Bitcoin. So I'm bullish for that. Like, I know some people don't like Bukele, and I don't really give. I don't have an option.
Don't stop believing, Yellow. Don't stop believing.
That was
Cheers,
beautifully
bye.
said.
Cheers, dudes.
See you, man. Always appreciate your input.
Cheers, my dude.
Enjoy The Sopranos.
You never did tell me what type of device you were using, but I'll let that slide.
Especially in the recent 48 hours, and try to give their thoughts and point of view on the ground. One reoccurring theme we keep hearing is the water crisis, and somewhere between 66 and 75% of the streams, rivers, lakes being rated as polluted. I would love to hear from the president, his plans for the other half of the bond, the 500 million to physical infrastructure improvements. I'd love to hear, tangible plans to improve that aspect.
Crickets.
I think that like stuff in terms of like how El Salvador is being managed and staying sustainable, those are really tough questions. And Bitcoiners love to say Bitcoin fixes this. Is like, can Bitcoin like help some of these less well managed states kind of get their shit together in terms of like their resources and managing their environments and stuff like that? I mean, I don't think that any country right now is doing a great job, even the best of them. But kind of curious if that's something that like Bitcoin even ties into.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
we can
curious
help.
what
We
the
can help
hierarchy
direct
of.
wealth. We can help direct wealth there, and bypass all the middlemen and all the red tape of reasons why you can't or why you have to get this or that approved. But yeah, you're right. At the end of the day, it does come down to the local leadership. That's why I would be interested in his answer. But
Yeah, I'm curious what the hierarchy of events would be, or of what that sovereign wealth fund is gonna work on, like infrastructure wise. Like, what are the first things that are of importance and what needs fixing the most? Like, yeah, the water crisis, but then I also heard that it's the majority of it might go to like internet infrastructure. So I'm not entirely sure, but how do those decisions get decided? Like, what is the most important? What gets taken care of first?
I feel like, yeah, those are all really interesting questions to drill down on with El Salvador. I think the thing I'm excited about is, I think Mark was talking about it earlier. CK was talking about just like the game theory, how this plays out from here. What are countries going to do in response to this? Because at some level, you can't expect countries who are even interested or paying attention to just like copy paste this plan. They're going to try their own experiment, right? And they're just going to have, it's not going to be volcanoes. It's going to be their own access to natural resources are appealing to them. So, and I think that's going to happen pretty quickly. And that's why I think this news is exciting. Like, the details to me are like, cool, even if I'm down with 30% of what they're putting out there, it's like, it's still exciting because it's better than any proposal that's not tied to Bitcoin right now. So the momentum that comes from this, and all of it matters. Yellow was saying, like, having a guy who's the head of a state who's dunking on the IMF and Steve Hanke, like, at some level that matters. That's moving the ball forward. So yeah, I think all of this is positive and bullish, and I don't know. I'm just feeling optimistic, I guess, overall.
And it's in stark contrast to the rest of the world, where we have Austria and Germany threatening over here. We have the whole world going into this minimum tax system, and he's basically rejecting all that and going the opposite direction. So I mean, I'm super bullish on that. A lot of the stuff is like micromanaging the kind of the future, like how's your water management kind of going to be. Some of that stuff is to be determined. I think the one, it would be good if he could kind of future cast some of maybe where he thinks this goes politically, because I know a lot of people kind of have some doubts there. The one big question mark I think should probably be addressed is what's going on with the Chivo wallet specifically, and the ability for other people to use their own wallets, custody their own coins. I know, like in Bitcoin City, supposedly with no sales tax, well, they're going to have a 10% sales tax, but if everyone's paying with Lightning and Bitcoin, how are they going to collect that? And then it kind of starts leading people to think, well, maybe they're going to use the Chivo wallet to automatically pull funds from people. So that's probably a big question mark, unless somebody's already heard otherwise on that.
Well, I mean, sales tax is out of all the taxes. I kind of touched on this before you joined, Mark, because I thought it was interesting that they went with the sales tax only model. And in the past, when I've like theorized with people about how does ethical taxation, if that's even a term, how does taxation with the most ethics in mind happen in a post Bitcoin world? I've kind of landed on sales tax as probably the surveillance apparatus with minimum burdensome regulation, because I guess like you enforce it on the merchant level, right? Like you like make in a similar way that they already do sales tax enforcement, at least in the developed world, where you kind of simulate how much you project, how much a store is bringing in revenue and cash flow, and if you see a major shortfall, then you ask for receipts. So you could do that without necessarily enforcing Chivo usage on the merchant side.
Yeah, that's true, and I'm sure there's other good options like that, Matt. So I think some clarification around that. I too agree with you. The sales tax is probably the ethical way. It's a consumption tax, right? Like pay for what you use, kind of a thing. So makes sense in that manner. So yeah, I'm sure there's other ways to do it, but it would just be good, probably to kind of address that. I've heard a lot of stuff about that Chivo wallet, and is it,
wallet is like CBDC light, basically, because you can still use Bitcoin. You can use this open monetary network if you want, but it has a lot of the impact that we'd see from like a CBDC rollout, where like the government has complete control of the funds, they have complete surveillance capability, they have complete taxation ability. There's not much transparency, but at the bright side, like at least use Bitcoin. I also wonder, like if you have a city that has 0% capital gains tax, 0% income tax, 0% payroll tax, if there'll be like citizenship controls, like if you're only allowed in the city if you have a certain wealth level or something like that. Like how do they stop basically a drain from the other parts of the country?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, what's the specific designation? I think I've seen examples where it's like a special economic zone. They do that a lot in Africa and other places where they have special, just like, tax regulations for that zone. But, as we talked about earlier, there haven't been very many good examples of this being executed. Like that's the reality of it. And that's why I think people are rightly suspicious and cautiously optimistic, because again, this is the first time that I know of that it's been purely based in a Bitcoin economy. So there's that precedent that's being set. But beyond that, like all these problems, still kind of creep in with other attempts at these charter cities or these private cities.
I will share though on a pleb level, there's a lot of just small retailer excitement to buy one of the $100 bonds, even if they aren't really sure if Tether will exist in 10 years and if they'll ever see any money out of this. But just as a piece of history, buy the bond, be able to print it out and hang it on your wall. I know that's what I want to do. And I know if I'm thinking like that and other people are repeating that sentiment, yeah, there's some ground level excitement in this, absolutely, and it doesn't have to be a massive whale from East Asia.
So Matt, I'm curious on your opinion here. I mean, because I was thinking about this. I mean, the bond is they're going to raise $1 billion and they're going to put half of it into Bitcoin, and then they're going to pay you an interest rate of like I think 6.5% or something like that, and then you get some of the benefit if Bitcoin appreciates, which is the whole assumption of the bond in the first place. I mean, I guess you're probably right that some people will buy it as like a collectible or ideologically, but I assume the majority of people that will be buying it are the types of people that buy bonds and don't buy Bitcoin, like their whatever, like their prospectus or whatever, and their investor mindset is like they only can buy bonds and they can't buy Bitcoin. Like if you can just be
raising debt to buy Bitcoin, and just in the last 2 weeks, we've seen 3 or 4, Bitcoin mining companies go do the same thing. This whole new BitDeer thing, and there's all these different mining companies, Blockware and Rhodium and Iris. Like they've all raised $200 to $300 million to go buy Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining equipment. So it's happening a lot. Like billions of dollars have been raised this way in just the last couple of months from all these companies. And yeah, of course, Matt, I mean, we would rather buy Bitcoin, but I think to your point, like a lot of institutions, hedge funds, pensions funds, et cetera, they're buyers of bonds. And then on a bigger level, you have the sovereign players, right? So the sovereign players buy bonds. So we already know there's a massive market for it because MicroStrategy has been oversubscribed every time. These Bitcoin mining companies are oversubscribed every time. So yeah, it's a different buyer, but I think they're offering 6.5% upfront plus depending on what the performance of Bitcoin does based off of what Blockstream says, which is a pretty aggressive. They're claiming they're saying it can get to $1 million within 5 years. But they think that after 10 years, the bond will have paid out about 146% is the number they come up with. And so today, about $18 trillion of bonds are negative yielding, right? About half the bonds are negative yielding. Even the U.S. Treasury is 1.5%, but there's a 6.5% inflation, so it's negative yielding. So to have a sovereign, a nation offer a bond at 6.5% with an upside of 146, it's pretty revolutionary. It's massive.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm
It's
hoping,
super attractive if you compare it to other bonds. But am I correct in my thinking that it's literally impossible for it to outperform Bitcoin the way it's set up?
Yeah, I would say it's impossible for it to outperform Bitcoin the way it's set up because you're not going to get the full upside. So it's mostly for people that can't buy Bitcoin directly or wouldn't.
what I'm hoping is that this meets the regulatory requirements for all, as you said, Mark, all those sovereign wealth funds and institutions that must hold, mandated to hold bonds on their portfolio, part of their charter. They can't get around it. And maybe they're already fully allocated to Bitcoin and Bitcoin related equities. And now they have to fill their bond quota. Hopefully this meets whatever regulatory requirements they have. I'm no expert, but fingers crossed.
All right, P. So I'm curious. After today, you got a head of state confirmed coming to the conference in Miami. Where do you go from here? What other conversations does this open up?
Did you peek out, P? Like, is this the peak? Do we see you peak?
The P for peak?
Oh, it's telling me.
I guess he did.
I guess he left us.
No, sorry. Here's the thing. I have two different mute buttons, and what inevitably happens is one is off mute, and then the other is, and then I'm talking for like 30 seconds, a minute, and nobody can hear me. And I just assume it's like respectful silence, given the gravitas of what I'm saying, and in fact, it's just nobody can even hear what the fuck I'm talking about. But no, in answer to your question, no. You both know the answer to this. This is not the peak. If you think for a second that I'm not having conversations already with other heads of state, with many U.S. senators and Congress people, you are sadly mistaken, and your face is going to melt off when you see the lineup that we're building out. So it's going to be amazing.
Perfect answer.
The specific answer though is the Lord Admiral of the Moon, and also the tribal owner of Olympus Mons, which of course is on Mars, will be attending Bitcoin 2022.
Mark, you're currently sorry, P, for not giving you respectful gravitas.
Fuck you, man.
Mark, you're currently living in Puerto Rico, right? I'm curious, is there are they feeling the El Salvador kind of pressure over there? Because it's like historically been a low tax.
I mean, these meetups. I went 2 weeks ago, and they asked me to come speak to their big event. There was like 60, 70 people there, and I gave them a presentation why Bitcoin's the next Bitcoin. And I thought they were going to boo me out of there, but they actually loved it. And then they wanted me to come be part of this their first annual blockchain week in San Juan. And I said, okay, sure. What do you want me to do? And I said, what Bitcoin stuff is going on? Oh, we don't have any Bitcoin stuff going on. I'm like, what? Like, Bitcoin's not even represented? They're like, no. They're like, but if you want to do something, you're more than welcome. Come do what you want. And I reached out to Christian and see if Bitcoin Mag wanted to get involved. I talked to Trammell Ventures. Matt, I actually thought maybe I should reach out to you, but I kind of have this opportunity. But yeah, unfortunately, these people are just overrun with crypto, chasing dollars, and I haven't seen anything from the government about it.
That's unfortunate. I guess this kind of thing, like, I guess the pressure is going to take a little bit more time. We need to all be a little bit patient.
Yeah, I think given though, maybe to the question though, Matt, Puerto Rico was kind of one of the first nations to actually default, because nations don't really default on their bonds. And so Puerto Rico actually did. And it was a pretty big deal, which is exactly why they've opened up this tax program that they have, which is actually bullish in my opinion, where most nations will just continue to squeeze whoever's left. Puerto Rico actually opened up a tax advantage program to recruit people to come to the island and build businesses, and they have, and they've attracted massive amounts of people with big businesses. So kind of a little game theory, kind of like what El Salvador is doing, but they haven't taken that next step. Unfortunately, oh man, the governor that runs Puerto Rico, they're heavy socialists over here, like heavy socialists. So where it seems like, and again, I don't know the politics of El Salvador, but it seems like the president is more of a free market kind of capitalist, like wants his country to grow. Unfortunately, over here in in Puerto Rico, they're still heavily on the decline.
What will it take for that to reverse? Or imagine you could like wave, let's say, a reasonable magic wand. What is the thing that would happen in Puerto Rico that's realistic that would change that trajectory?
Well, I that's why I think this bond thing is actually really good. I think if they can issue bonds. Now the problem is Puerto Rico doesn't really have a volcano, which a year ago nobody would have ever thought of a volcano as being a natural resource. But you have to think.
Let me stop you right there, Mark. I'm no longer interested in moving to Puerto Rico. Just I'm out. Sorry, continue.
But if you think about it, like as far back as you go through history, the wealth of a nation was based off their natural resources: water, oil, gold, etc. But now they have the volcano, which, okay, so what? They have heat. Okay, well, heat can turn to electricity. Okay, so what? You can't move electricity. Well, now you can mine Bitcoin there. And then you start to think about, I mean, I'm a surfer, so I travel all over the world chasing waves, and all through the South Pacific where the best waves are, there's all these atolls with volcanoes everywhere. And like all these nations could now have like massive natural resources because they have volcanoes there. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see the way the global power lines are redrawn based off of that. But anyway, back to Puerto Rico. Man, we have power outages all the time over here. And AOC's been over here campaigning. She wants to shut down one of our biggest diesel generator plants that produces 20% of the island's electricity.
Jesus fucking Christ.
And she says, don't worry. The experts told me that there won't be any problems with electricity or power or prices if we shut down. And I'm like, dude, it's 20% of the island's electricity, and we already have blackouts all the time. Like, so there's a massive problem with energy. So there's definitely not enough energy to mine Bitcoin over here.
This sounds exactly like what happened in New York, where they shut down the nuclear power plant, and then they were immediately had to basically send out a red alert that is, I think it's just below. There's like 7 tiers, I think, of red alerts that you can get like pushed to your cell phone, and the one like just below the president is personally reaching out to like every American or whatever within a region. It was the level that they used, which is like the level of like, chemical attack, like whatever the fuck. And it was like, you need to turn off your AC units because the city of New York is completely out of electricity. So if you don't turn off your AC, everyone's going to die in hospitals. It's going to be real bad. And this was just after basically saying the same thing. Like, we can shut down, I think it was 3 Mile Island, right? They were like, we can shut down 3 Mile Island. No problem, bro. Don't even worry about it.
I think over a long enough period of time, back to kind of like what would Puerto Rico have to do? I think over a long enough period of time, and this just goes back to the game theory I was talking about, bonds aside, by El Salvador saying we're shutting down all mandates, all restrictions. There's a lot of people that are going to go there because of that. I know, plenty of Bitcoin nomads that are trying to find a home right now. And so a lot of people are going to go there. We're already seeing massive amounts of capital going there, people buying real estate there. And I just think other nations are going to want that. Other nations are going to want to attract that capital. Puerto Rico kind of has that because of their tax program. So they're also kind of competing on that level. Eventually, those will merge. It's just going to take a while, but that's what makes me bullish. I think that's the only thing that breaks the grip of authoritarianism is they're going to be outcompeted.
That's real talk. I mean, it's also like, it's a good reminder that we got to lower our time preference on some of this stuff to realize that, Bitcoiners just now are finding themselves in a place where they're not, maybe welcome in as many countries as before. And the way that the game theory is starting to play out is there's a slow trickle into a place like El Salvador based on the Bitcoin friendly environment that they're cultivating. But the fruit of that is going to take a long time to cultivate and really see all the way to fruition. So, but that's exciting.
And as Bitcoiners that want to continue to see this play out, right? I mean, we need to do all that we can to support El Salvador. So, for those of you that are already kind of nomads or thinking about being nomads, I mean, now's a good time to go set up shop there and really help that. And if they have a big enough benefit of what's going on down there, if enough of these bonds sell, if enough people move down there, they're going to continue, and it's going to continue to grow, and then other nations will follow suit. So, yeah, it's important for us all.
Do we know like when we expect to hear like how the sale of that first bond offering or whatever is going to be completed, or how well it's gone?
I didn't see anything about it. I was just working on some stuff for a video on it today that I recorded, and I went through a bunch of stuff. I didn't see anything that said that, like when it would sell, when it would expire and stuff. So I think it's probably hasn't been published yet. But kind of to the earlier point I was making, where MicroStrategy's been oversold on several of them. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen about a half dozen go through with publicly traded, Bitcoin companies. So my guess is it's probably going to sell out no problem.
Do we think the fact that it's on Liquid makes it less appetizing to those types of funds that were mentioned?
Yeah, that's
like sovereign wealth funds and whatnot.
Complexity adds a level of maybe less transparency. Definitely some complexity there. So yeah, it might a little bit. Maybe some of those sovereign wealth funds that can't buy crypto directly, they might have a problem with that. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to take the money, so I guess there's still some to be figured out.
Is that like the Bitfinex thing? Isn't that like, so basically if you have a Bitfinex account, you have access to these bonds, or is that oversimplifying it?
Yeah, I mean, Bitfinex is going to be the first that offer it because they're also, I believe, maybe them and Bitsy are the only exchanges that offer Liquid in the first place. But technically, I guess anyone with a Liquid wallet can technically trade them and hold them.
So
Bitfinex is the easiest way right now.
So is that represents way more of a retail audience than the Sailor notes, right? The Sailor notes are more corporate audience that's buying those up.
Yeah, it does. You're right. You're right when you think about it like that. I know. I heard at least 6 months ago, maybe longer. I know Blockstream. I heard Adam back talking about Blockstream has been starting mining, and they're doing these mining bonds that they were selling on Liquid and through Bitfinex. So now that we're kind of talking through this, it almost seems like it's just like a little bit of an extension of what they were already doing for the last 6 or 7 months, and now just kind of extending it to El Salvador. Yeah, now that we talked through it, it seems like it's an extension of that, and probably is more for a retail crowd.
Yo, Neil, you just came up stage, former Blockstream. You have an opinion here on this?
So, sorry, I'm in a bit of a lucky environment over here. Like how far they extend it to retail will completely depend on the regulatory setup. So this is going to be issued on Liquid, and it'll probably be dependent on Blockstream Green, which is a 2 of 2 wallet. And that means they'll be able to control who can actually trade this token. So it won't be just as simple as setting up a Liquid wallet and buying and selling. At least it's unlikely to be like that. People will need to set up a Liquid securities account, and they'll probably need to verify their identity with some kind of third party.
Oops.
And if they want to transfer between people, like that, the person they're transferring to will also need to be verified.
Wait, sorry. How does Liquid make it impossible to transfer if you aren't without specific explicit approval, or how is that feasible?
So it's not so much Liquid as it is Blockstream Green. So technically you could achieve something similar on Bitcoin too. With a Liquid securities account, what you do is you have a 2 of 2 wallet, and one of those keys is held by a third party.
Oh, of course. Okay,
and so
got it.
That third party is verifying that the address that you're sending to is an approved account.
Wait, so
now,
is this like native functionality you're saying? Like this is basically like, oh yeah, this is the expectation for how Blockstream Green works within these scenarios.
Yeah, so Liquid Securities is already set up. You can set up a Blockstream Green wallet now and set up a Liquid Securities account.
No shit, that sounds fucked up.
Yeah.
I mean, but
so-
is that fair? I mean, like my reaction is I'm like, I don't like that.
Yeah, but what you're dealing with is securities. So like, there isn't any other solution to this. Like, the securities laws around the world are like super strict and
So,
very,
Neil-
very dangerous.
Wait, you're saying that like securities laws make it so that basically when you own a security, you don't actually own a security. Like basically in the same way that like if you go into like your stockbroker and you're like, yo, give me that stock certificate. They're like, we don't even have it. Get fucked. You're saying that basically that is a legal framework that is imposed?
Or is that I'm not a lawyer.
No.
I mean,
but
you're
still holding the token.
The KYC is the important part. They need to enforce the KYC and make sure that anyone who's trading it. I mean, it seems also like it's an American thing. I mean, they got to make sure that Americans aren't trading it unless they're accredited or approved or whatnot. Neil, like to the other question though, do you think like that the fact that it's traded on Liquid is going to deter like these sovereign wealth funds and these large institutional players who normally are the targets for these types of bonds offerings?
I don't know how those kind of people think, so it's very difficult for me to say. Although I think if they are uncomfortable, but there is appetite to invest in something like this, they'll probably just purchase through custodians. The custodians will like handle the liquid custody for them. So yeah, I mean, I think the question is whether like people actually want a bond like this.
Yeah. I also just want to jump back. I was not implying that Blockstream Green is nefarious or like weird or something. You're absolutely right. This is like standard security stuff. So I want to be clear about that. And that, as you said, this could, in theory, be implemented on Bitcoin as well. It's just a question of which, how you set it up. So.
Yeah, Neil, I was saying before you jumped in, I mean, we know there's massive demand for this bond because MicroStrategy's done a couple of them and all the Bitcoin companies, the mining companies doing it. But to the point Matt brought up, I agree. I mean, putting it into the liquid is going to take away from just that main part of the market. And so you're going to have to kind of have that specialty knowledge. So,
I mean,
but I think there's probably enough appetite for it either way. It's not that big.
I mean, I will say like, I love the idea of liquid. Well, there's many things I love about the idea of liquid, but as as Udi pointed out recently, and I understand this to be true, the Dentacoin, which is like the standing joke in the Bitcoin world, has more throughput than Liquid does as of today. Like Dentacoin still has more transactions and value being transmitted than Liquid does. So I think it's just not. It's not being actively used.
I mean, maybe they've got a higher transaction rate, but you don't know how much is being transacted on the Liquid network in terms of size of the transactions because it's all confidential transactions, right? So,
fair enough.
I mean, there could be much bigger transactions happening on Liquid. We just don't know because
that's a great point. Fair enough.
Hey, P and Neil, good to see you for a minute. Matt, I got to jump. So,
all right, Mark.
Have fun.
Always love your contributions.
Cheers.
Thanks, man.
See you guys.
I mean, just to go back, I still, regardless KYC or not, like I just don't see that much retail interest in a bond like this. Like it's obviously very attractive compared to other bonds, but it is literally designed so it can never outperform Bitcoin.
Yeah, but
I mean, is it really for retail? Like, if we zoom
Exactly.
out, who's this really for?
But then that goes back to the previous comment where are sovereign wealth funds and like hedge funds and like institutional players gonna fuck around with Liquid to get it?
Well, I guess
I thought that it was Bitfinex where they had to buy it. Is Bitfinex what is the difference? Like what each party's providing? Sorry, Matt.
No, I was going to say exactly that point too. It depends on how easy the on-ramps are through Bitfinex, I imagine. There's no shortage of interest in U.S. dollar-denominated debt in East Asia, I'm not worried about that. That's why literally Tether exists over there and is so popular. But yeah, how easy is it to navigate through Bitfinex, to get into Liquid, to get into the bond? Exactly.
No, really, what is the interface? Is it Liquid or is it Bitfinex?
Well, Bitfinex has Liquid support.
Right.
So you can buy it through Bitfinex and you can withdraw it to Green Wallet if you want to, I guess, semi-hold it yourself because of 2 of 2 multi-sig.
I mean, that should be better and easier than the legacy custodial solutions, right? I mean, sure, it might be new to them, but at the same time, it's permissionless, one and done. You can take it; it's your own.
But I mean, Bitfinex doesn't exactly have the best reputation either, like in the traditional finance world.
Right.
I mean, they're very connected to Tether. I think that's a world of difference, you know, buying a El Salvador Volcano Bitcoin bond through Bitfinex that's held on Tether, that's held on Liquid, than like calling up Goldman Sachs to buy a MicroStrategy bond.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
does this
not,
model
this is
of issuing these bonds like more permissionlessly in a way, does that compete directly and threaten directly the way you buy a bond for any other country?
Yes.
Asked and answered. Next question.
Well, that's kind of a rhetorical
I don't know. It
question.
seems completely different.
Hoping for some elaboration, but fuck it.
I don't know. We're all just speculating, right? Like, let's see this thing launch. And I mean, I guess there could be some providers that like package it up and make it easy for traditional finance to get in and then take a vig off the top or something like that.
Quick reset here. So we are at the top of the hour. We got 30 minutes left before Bitcoin Magazine takes over. We're talking about Bitcoin 2022, Miami, April 6th through the 9th. We got 8 more days until ticket prices go up. So grab those.
you sound like a radio DJ. In a
right? That's what I'm going
world
for. That's what I'm going
bereft
for.
of meaning, one
Bitcoin
event
2022.
one event will recenter the universe around the axis which it belongs. Bitcoin 2022. Join us or die in the wasteland. How's that?
Miami Beach Convention Center.
Yeah.
April 6th through the 9th.
Yep.
4 days.
4 days of absolute majesty. You will enter a mere man or woman, and you will exit a celestial being. Bitcoin.
So I have a question, a reset question on Bitcoin City. We got lost in the bonds a little bit because Yellow was super excited about the bonds, and then he got us on the tangent and then just left.
Bastard.
Bitcoin City. Does anyone think on stage that Bitcoin City will have a population of over 2 million people in 5 years' time?
Ooh. I mean, that's a difficult question to answer. I think it's so much of a depend.
5 years?
I was trying to make it objective.
I don't think people are going to live there in 5 years.
Matt, wait, hold on.
That's early.
Trying to make it objective. My first interactions with you were on Clubhouse, where you would host rooms, and the title of the room would be like something like "True or False: Is Bitcoin designed to pump forever?" And anytime anybody came on stage, you would be like, "Is Bitcoin designed to pump forever?" And if they said anything other than an emphatic yes, you would boot them to the audience immediately, which I think was appropriate. I think it was absolutely appropriate.
Matt, over under January 1st, 2027.
What?
I think he just tried to
2 million people?
2 million.
I think under.
You heard it here.
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know what the standard city growth is like for a specific successful city.
All right. Well, since the country has 6 million total, 6.5.
All right, fair enough. So, I'm gonna go with Matt on this one. I'm gonna go under.
I mean,
although
that's why it was solid. You know, it's going to be a damper on how quickly Bitcoin City gets adopted.
So I'm curious, and Matt, George, feel free to take us in a different direction, but I actually it's not that relevant to what we're talking about now. But I actually don't know very much about the water issues in El Salvador. I would be curious to know more.
Yep.
Maybe if you have any like specific links, if you want to DM them to me, I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I have full disclosure times before the pandemic, and the whole region is under a bit of a water crisis. Less rainfall than they expected year after year, even though they're literally rainforests. And quite frankly, pollution is the biggest problem. A lot of dumping issues. So, but I remember, I specifically remember a National Geographic magazine back in 2018 that was talking about how 66 to 75% of these waterways are just flat out listed as polluted. And it's a big damper on their development.
Interesting. Yeah, send me those links.
I'll get you.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Just, I mean, just to go back, I mean, I'm aware the population of El Salvador is 6.5 million, but this proposal is clearly designed to court outsiders, right? And the immediate comparison, I would think, is like a Hong Kong or like a Singapore or something like that.
Man.
And the presentation was, quite frankly, designed in a way to kind of elicit that kind of feeling. This idea of like an international business city focused on low tax rates and specifically Bitcoin in this case.
That's a
So
great
I think
point.
2 million people is, a relatively low bar to deem success, and you have to have some kind. I'm a gambling man. Like if we're gonna lay our cards on the table here, we need to have an objective number.
No.
So that's why I said
that is a great fucking point, dude. I mean, Hong Kong was didn't Hong Kong have some of the largest like economic growth in modern history once they set it up the way they did? And I think, correct me if I'm wrong there. I'm not actually positive, but my understanding.
I mean, Hong Kong was literally bombed flat in World War II by the Japanese.
There you go.
Like they started fresh in the 50s.
Yeah.
And I mean, they rose to where they are today.
On the ground.
I don't know who told you that my name is Philip. Perhaps you inviting up?
Jamie.
I'm assuming this person has requested. Nope, they have not. Jamie, if you would like to speak.
Singapore also followed a similar pattern of economic explosion like Hong Kong.
Yeah, man, I love that idea though, Matt. And I think that is a great point. When we talk about the population of El Salvador only being 6 million people, you're right that presentation was not designed to. It was not, the target was not nation states competing in the same way that that cities offer insane tax write-offs or tax incentives to companies, right? I'm San Francisco, the city of San Francisco, basically bent itself over backwards and put itself over the barrel and pull down its pants in order to get Twitter to move its headquarters from hey, it worked for them from like Menlo Park or wherever it was in the South Bay to San Francisco. I mean, what they literally ended up doing was creating an the equivalent of an economic exclusion zone or whatever it's called. And the gerrymandering was absolutely be creating incentives to bring people into their economies because they need to or because they want to. And I'm excited. I'm here for it. I'm excited for it. So I love the idea of a Hong Kong style environment in El Salvador, and I'm excited for that in other countries as well, including eventually the United States. We live in a weird situation in the United States, which is, all of us are incredibly spoiled by living in the country that is kind of the world reserve currency. And that gives the majority of us a profoundly warped view of the world. And so it is no surprise to me that United States citizens and other, well-developed, strong currency countries are the countries that are the most kind of like, whoa, Bitcoin, who needs it? And it's countries like El Salvador and, Panama and Portugal and Georgia and all these other places where they have to, depend on the US dollar for the store, for store of value, they immediately get it. You talk to someone in any of these countries and they're like, oh, fuck yeah, Bitcoin seems awesome. And you talk to someone in the US and they're like, I mean, but it harms the environment, and which is not true at all. And, it's just, we're headed towards a much more transparent and I would argue fantastic place in the near future in terms of nation states and cities incentivizing people to move there.
And we keep hearing
wonderful.
the
I
countries
found
that
it.
are good, Matt.
P, do you mind if I share it up in the nest? I found it. 2 years later, 2018. Yep, here it is.
Go for it. I mean, sure, why not? Pix or it didn't happen, my friend.
Did the term nest come organically, or was that
I was
a
just
Twitter
wondering
top-down term?
I have no
I mean,
Well,
idea.
we
Twitter
floated
is
the
a bird.
box, throw it in my
It's
box,
probably
put it in my
top-down.
box, but that didn't take off. It made some people
In
uncomfortable.
my
I don't like
box.
Nest.
I know, it's
Nest
weird. It's
doesn't
fucking
work.
weird. I woke up one day
Well, Twitter's a bird.
and
yeah.
something had been whispering in my ear the word nest associated with Twitter
I like
Spaces for
Nest.
hours, and I just decided that it was something that I had
disturbing.
chosen and that I loved. And
It fits the whole
Wait, did
bird.
anyone just hear George? Twitter's a bird, yo, is the best response. I'll give you that.
Thank you.
Hey
Good night.
guys, I have to run out to take my girl to soccer tonight. But if you guys want me to weigh in a little bit on the water situation in El Salvador, I can briefly. And if you have any questions, then I can hang out just for a bit. So yeah, like Matt was saying, Central America, water is a huge issue. Not necessarily because there's the lack of fresh water, although we are running into that problem, but because there's a lack of infrastructure, lack of water treatment facility plans, as well as the infrastructure to carry it from the water facility treatment plants over to neighborhoods. Neighborhoods are subdeveloped. San Salvador actually sits in a very ancient part of El Salvador, which was home to the Pipiles and the Lencas and the Mayas, and they chose that specific region for a reason. It was habitable. It could be farmed and so on. I'll be honest. I don't know too much about the area in La Union, which means the Union, where Bitcoin City is, but it seems to be a good area in concept. But there's a lack of complete infrastructure because it is a remote area. But there is land available, and I think that a lot of the infrastructure projects that are going to have to go there, because there's nothing, you get to start brand new, fresh, and it could be earthquake proof. There could be lots of good things. But from where I'm standing, it looks like they have water to one of the rivers, which drains out on the border of El Salvador and Honduras. I can't remember what the name of that river is right now, and so they may have access to water. I think just San Salvador, the greater San Salvador region. San Salvador proper has 1.6 million people. The greater San Salvador region, which is Santa Tecla, which is a lot of the area where a lot of Bitcoin conferences were adjacent to, has another 400,000 people, and so I don't think it's gonna, from my own judgment, I don't think it's gonna have the capacity to, within 5 years, hold 2 million people. But I think whoever it holds, they'll be, very fortunate and very well developed, politically tricky for Bukele to maneuver, because most Salvadorians don't have access to fresh, clean water. They actually killed a bill from the opposition. It wasn't actually from the opposition. I think it was a bill from the previous session that guaranteed Salvadorians access to clean water as a human right. They killed it, not because they're evil, although the opposition says so, but because they actually can't do that type of guarantee and actually deliver on it. There's a lot of work, and so they're drafting a new one, which is very similar, but I think it gives them a little bit of more breathing room in order to be able to actually deliver that. And so I don't know what that looks like. I'm not an expert in politics. I just pay attention, but that's kind of like the reality around water and what that may mean for the concept of Bitcoin City. I said this in a previous space that I think that there's an opportunity to take best practices in terms of urban development, and I think that they'll try to maybe tap into a lot of expert resources that way. But yeah. So if you have any questions, I'll hang around for a couple minutes and then I'll take my girl to soccer here.
Jamie, thank you so much. That's super insightful and helpful. I do have just one question, and it might be a dumb question, but it's one that I've seen sort of in the wake of the news. Is what's the wisdom behind building a city literally at the bottom, at the foot of a volcano? Like, are there actual concerns about that? Is that a real question? Like,
well, San Salvador is at the foot of a volcano. I actually, when I was a kid, I lived right in front of it, right in front, and it was great. And uh, the threat is not the volcano erupting, and like people live in Hawaii, people live everywhere there's active volcanoes. The threat is more or less earthquakes, so seismic activity, perhaps tsunamis closer to the coast, and also mudslides. So if it rains too much, then the mountain or the volcano could produce mudslides. So it's not. I think you can mitigate a lot of that. So people have done it for centuries, and I think with the technology and the know-how that we have today, is is not something that's impossible. What there's a port. There's a port for export and import, which has been underutilized, and there's also going to be a line that unites all of Central America with a bullet train, and del Pacifico, which means the train of the Pacific. Concept. These are all the promises in Bukele's platform from 2017. Actually, in fact, he was tweeting about using Bitcoin in 2017. Nobody really paid attention to those tweets back then, but Bitcoin is not something new. It's something that he's talked about for a long time, and so that's the plan, and that's why they're putting it there, because there's a lot of things that need to be there. He's also trying to deliver on a promise of the west of the country, which is where that is, where it has been underdeveloped. People have forgotten about it. People are very poor there. The various governments came in and out saying that they would lift the standard of living and improve the economic outcomes for people in that region, and that's never been addressed. So part of it is to deliver on that promise. His mom is actually from that area as well, so he has like a personal connection there. But beyond that, it's been an area that's been overlooked, right? The other thing is that there would be very little displacement in where things are going, because there's not a lot of population, and so there's less issues with displacing people, and there's not a lot of population, which means that a lot of people could actually become part of Bitcoin City and take full part in the economy and not be kind of like shut out of it, right? So
awesome, thank you.
okay, guys, I gotta go. I'm gonna take my girl, and you guys enjoy. If I can, I'll listen later on.
Thanks, Jamie.
Hey, thank you, Jamie, as always. Take care.
Thanks, man. All right, what else we got? We have 10 more minutes. I think we should pull some people up, answer some random questions, and then shift over to base.
I like it, but let me just ask Matt real quick. After all that, do you want to adjust your $2 million number or 2 million population?
Yes, George.
Sorry, my bad.
Well, I mean,
George, these people.
First of all, I really appreciate that insight. We're like very we're very privileged in the Western world to have infrastructure that relatively works. I mean, we complain about it all the time because it's degrading, but we should be very grateful for it. That said, I mean, my 2 million person number is an over and under. I think it's like a very good line for an objective analysis on whether or not Bitcoin City is correct. I would say to you, what number would you say is a correct or a good objective measurement for the success of Bitcoin City? If it's not 2 million, I think 2 million is conservative. I mean, if you're a city of 2 million, you're still a quarter of New York City. Like, are you even a city at that point, or are you just a large town?
But you're talking about 5 years. I mean, I just think, again, if you lower your time preference a little bit more than kind of where you're at right now.
Okay, George, 10 years, 2 million people, over and under.
All right, I would take the over on 10 years, or I would take.
Okay.
What I'd rather do is take the over in 5 years at, like, a reasonable number, like 1 million.
Okay, so 1 million people, 5 years. You want to bet $1 million sats on that?
All right, I'll take it. Million
Okay,
sats.
let's fucking go.
Oh, I love it.
Go.
Wait. Sorry. We need a DLC for this, and I'm happy to be the oracle.
We don't need a DLC. George is good for it. He'll pay me the $1 million sats.
Million sats.
George still owes me $5 million. A hot dog was a sandwich, and I was right, and he was wrong, and he still hasn't paid me back.
That is simply not true.
Liar.
I have a unique bet here. I have a unique. Would you be willing to set up a side bet of the price of Bitcoin in USD will always be higher than the population of Bitcoin City?
Ooh.
Always.
This sounds like a bullshit derivative contract, and I'm here for it.
We could say 10 years, but my bet is always. Well, we can say 10 years.
Look, I actually, Matt, in addition to the bet you just made with George, I'd like to take a side bet on whether or not the person that was just speaking is correct, and I'll give you 10-to-1 leverage.
I'm gonna have to go into margin, but I'll see that.
Matt's.
Wait, what? Can you say that side bet a second time?
Yeah, I was basically trying to construct a CDO, style situation where it's like, I'm betting on the outcome of this bet, and then somebody else on the stage can bet on the outcome of my bet, and before you know it, you've got 1,000x leverage, and Bitfinex is traveling back in time to liquidate your grandparents so that you're never born, and the Bitcoin was always theirs.
I'm going to offer up my Bitcoin bonds as collateral for all these bets, though. So it always comes back to Tether.
How many of your kidneys will you put up? That's what I want to know. I'm gonna take that laugh as both of them. Okay, next
3. Yeah.
Next question. Walton, you have your hand raised. What's up, my man?
Yeah, I want to know when Odell thinks that the dollar price of Bitcoin will overtake the block height.
Ooh.
The real flipping.
Man, these are some good questions.
It could be within a year.
That was not an answer, Odell. It could be.
Why so bearish?
Well, if it's not within a year, it'll be the next cycle.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be before
that's a solid prediction.
$1 million. It'll be before $1 million, definitely.
I like it.
It'll happen before the population of Bitcoin City passes the block height. That's for sure.
I was trying to convince my wife that there should be like a Bitcoin dowry, and she just hit me repeatedly in the head for suggesting it. But one day.
All right, we got to make sure to put this in writing, Odell. We got to timestamp this. We're talking 5 years from today.
I'm telling you, DLCs.
1 million population for 1 million sats. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, and I say not going to happen, and you say it's going to happen.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to tweet it out.
Do it.
I will retweet that as an endorsement.
Wait, Matt, tweet out a side bet, which is I'm betting that you are correct.
Oh.
I want 2-to-1 odds.
Who are you gonna bet that with, though?
Bro,
the future, future P.
Can we just
$1 million sats in 5 years is gonna be.
Yeah, okay, I take it back. I take it back. You didn't get it in writing. You don't know what you're talking about. I didn't say that.
This is a big bet.
All right, fuck it. I'll bet 1/10 of that.
But if it's as much money as
$1 million sats in 5 years, yeah, this is a monster. These are some whales.
This is a serious bet right here.
I'm gonna sign one of the cardboard boxes that is currently acting as my desk, and that will be my collateral. Which is to say, it's worth nothing.
I got him to come down from 2 million population. I'm feeling pretty good.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that was a pretty good negotiation. I'll give that to you.
No, but I mean, all joking aside, I do think that the I know very little about economic incentive plans, but I think that the average person, and I consider myself in this regard certainly in that boat, also knows very little about how these systems are structured and how common they are. And I think that when people hear about these types of systems, separate from all the other stuff or the other concerns or questions that people have about the idea of, like, the Bitcoin city or whatever, most, if not all, major cities and certainly states have these types of incentive programs that are designed to lure businesses and wealthy people into them. And this is just an additional permutation of those types of systems where Bitcoin is involved. But I think it's important to point out that these types of systems are very, very common, because I've had a couple of conversations with people where they've been like, oh, it's fucking weird, like incentivizing businesses to move. And it's like, no. That is how businesses work in the United States and in most, if not all, countries. So it's a useful frame.
Facts. We got 3 minutes before Bitcoin Magazine takes us over. P, any closing thoughts from you?
None whatsoever.
That's not true. I don't believe that for 1 second.
So many thoughts.
I just like, as the months go by, P's desk is literally vanishing in front of our eyes. I remember you talking about it back in the summer, and I see its current state.
What was my desk in the summer? I don't remember the conversation.
You had chickens underneath it that you were raising.
That's
and
true.
You could hide underneath. Yeah, it was a whole thing.
Ah,
now,
fuck, I did tell you about that.
We are
I had a little herd of rabbits that were running around, and when I was hungry, I would just, painlessly turn one of those into Bitcoin and sell the Bitcoin, buy some chicken. Those are the days. And I feel more comfortable with that.
5 years.
You're going to buy a small island.
April 6th through 9th, we're going to throw the largest Bitcoin-only event in history. We're going to have the first time in history at a Bitcoin event, a current head of state, the current president, will be there to speak and announces, talk about his absolutely massive plans for Bitcoin and his country. So
consistency was 4,000 people. And when we got to, I think 2,000 or 3,000 people, the fire marshal came in and was like, there's too much Bitcoin in one place. You have to get out of here. And he started escorting people out. The main stage that I'm building the programming for is the Nakamoto stage. That stage seats 15,000 people. The second stage is the Genesis stage. That seats 10,000 people. And then we have a mining stage, which seats 2,000 people. And then we have an open source stage, which Matt is heavily involved in and is going to be, I don't want to promise anything, but he's going to be very heavily involved. You will see his face if you're at that stage. It's Matt, is it fair to say it's your baby?
The open source stage is going to be straight fire, and I expect most of you to spend the majority of time of the event at that stage.
I mean, can we call the open source stage a baby that you're birthing? Is it, or maybe it's a co-birth baby? We're both birthing the baby together, but it's
what?
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're doing like Lamaze breathing. It's gonna be great.
Me and P have been through a lot together.
That's right.
I don't say he's peaked without experience.
That's right. The point is, it's gonna be fucking amazing. And if you love Matt Odell, you better be there, because he is having a major hand in it, and his face is gonna be all over it. That's one stage is 15,000 people. One stage is 10,000 people. An entire mining stage, 2,000 people, an entire open source stage, 2,000 people, which, by the way, that is the largest open source. If you separated that from the whole conference, as I've said many times before in Spaces, it would be the largest open source only conference in history. So that's just one stage. And there's also going to be the industry stage. It's going to be fucking incredible. You should absolutely buy tickets. You won't be disappointed. Use code HaveFunStayingPoor if you choose to, and you will save 10%. There's a million other codes floating around. I like that one because it's funny. Also, promo code 69420 will also save you 10%. So choose the one that you think is the funniest, or the person you want to support. Doesn't matter. For us,
or
it's
if you're a pleb.
use the code pleb.
Yes. Walton has an incredible code. They all save you 10%. You should definitely use Walton's. Do it.
I'd just like to briefly thank our sponsors, kycjelly.com. That's kycjelly.com, the best place to learn about how to run your own Bitcoin Lightning node. Thank you.
Fuck yes. Yeah, join the Lightning Network, run a node. Plebnet is a great place to learn about the Lightning Network. Super amazing people like Walton, like myself in there who are trying to help people, although I've been there less frequently. Have fun. Don't stay poor.
Yo. So go to the conference. Sorry I missed a lot of this conference.
No, don't worry about it. We were just talking about the conference for days. You're good.
I love how CK just rolls in at the end to just chill the conference.
Go to the conference, y'all.
Yeah.
But this is not the end. This is actually the beginning of the Austin, Texas takeover.
So you're not going to close this space? You're just going to keep it open and run it?
Yes.
We were just warming up the crowd.
Yes,
You're welcome.
Exactly. This was the pregame.
I told them that you were about to post a video, CK, of you doing 3 backflips in quick succession and then screaming, "Oh!" Is that right?
See, CK, before I go and hand you over this room, I made a bet with George, and before I tell you which side,
so are we calling that 2026 or 2027?
5 years.
November 2022, 2026, literally 5 years from today.
Ah, shit.
Maybe I should bet CK my bet.
See, it's a good line.
I'm gonna go with no, but there are other Bitcoin cities.
Yeah, why are you so fucking bearish, CK?
Maybe he's bullish on other
bullish
cities.
on game theory. He's bullish on game theory.
All right, once again, I am trounced.
1 million people.
I'm hoisted by my own petard.
All right.
CK,
We'll see how
take it away, my friend.
Best of luck.
Okay, cheers,
luck.
guys. CK,
Cheers,
have fun. I'll talk to you guys later.
Peace.
Go to the conference. Peace.
Wait, so are we just sitting here in silence? Is that what's happening?
Oh, we can riff.
Yeah. So I have a question. This is an important one.
Yes.
Does this
special shout out? Oh, go ahead, Pete.
No. After you, Matt.
Oh,